Alright guys, how are we doing? Welcome back to another episode on the Fontana podcast. So there's nobody to interview today, sadly, but that's alright. What I'm going to do is I want to use this episode in a way of summarising the athletes that I've interviewed over the last couple of weeks, and also to thank them as well. So, we kicked off the podcast interview episodes with Adam Craig, and then we moved on to Craig Ruddy, Kenny Wilson, Neil Gourley, Chris O'Hare, Lynsey Sharp, Andrew Butchy, and then Johnny Mellor. And all these athletes in their own right are top calibre Scottish, UK, European, and world athletes. The talent that I had on was incredible, and I hope that you found some insightful training tips or competition tips that help you become a better athlete, a better person, and you've installed them into your own training, or even if it's the mindset, using their mindset to get you to where you want to go in your athletics career or your sporting career. And this podcast is what I wanted to do, is just summarise the takeaways from each athlete that spoke on the podcast. And we're going to start with Adam Craig. So, Adam Craig, top Scottish athlete, top UK athlete. He has a 10k time of 28 minutes and 32 seconds. He's fourth in the all-time Scottish 10km list, and that list heads by people like Callum Hawkins and Andrew Butchy. So you can see that he is at his top of his game, not just in Scotland but in Europe, in the UK as well. And when we spoke to Adam Craig, he spoke about consistency, and one of the most important things for him was not going too crazy in training sessions. He kind of used the analogy of, maybe going about 80 to 90% in training, never going to 100, and just waiting to use that for race day. I found that really insightful. I think a lot of athletes want to always do the heroic 110% all-out training sessions, but they sometimes lead to injury, they sometimes lead to burnout, and they sometimes also lead to not being able to perform on the day that you need to perform because you've left it in the training ground. So I thought that was a massive takeaway from Adam, and also that when he was in America, he completely trusted his coach. Even when he moved back to Scotland, he had full faith that his coach was going to get him to where he wanted to go. And then from there, he's now with Team New Balance Manchester with Steve Vernon. And again, he trusts his coach and he trusts his process that he's doing, and all credit to them, because he's ran 28 minutes and 32 seconds over 10k. He's breaking all his personal best from when he was in America to then when he was in Scotland. Now he's down in Manchester. So it's a massive credit to, Adam Craig's determination and willingness to get better, his willingness to also leave his ego at the door. I thought his humility was incredible. He is a very humble athlete, and he doesn't take any of his hard work or his talents or his wins or whatever it may be, his personal best, to heart or to his head. He just keeps cracking on with hard work and just wants to keep bettering himself every time he goes onto that start line. And then we move on to Craig Ruddy. 2 hours and 20 minutes for the marathon. That is a massive feat. I know that he is also ran under 2:20 for the marathon, but it didn't count because of a small mishaps in Frankfurt. But again, he's an athlete who's in sub 2:20 shape, but the power of 10 only gives him 2 hours and 20 minutes for his personal best over the marathon. And Craig spoke about consistency and not getting too caught up in great sessions over a marathon block. He spoke about getting good work, solid work, over a period of time, and looking at the big picture of a training block. How many weeks and how many months did you get back to back of marathon work? Not sort of, where was the fireworks session? Where was a session that told you were in amazing shape, you were in ridiculous shape, and you're going to run out your mind at your next marathon? He didn't speak about that. He spoke about making sure he just keeps ticking the boxes every day, every week, every month, and consistency leading him to success in his marathon build. He also spoke about trusting his coach and trusting the process. Another one that Adam was speaking about, Craig is speaking about again, trusting his coach and trusting his process. and then also understanding that marathon is a different beast to the track. You know, he used to be a really good track athlete with a quick 1500 metre personal best, but moving to the marathon's been a different beast, and it takes time to learn that. You know, his first marathon was 2:26, and from there he's now, you know, a 2:20 athlete. He's done many marathons and he's learning in each marathon block. So it's great to hear that Craig looks at himself as never a finished product, and is very, very humble to say that, you know, he's still not learned the marathon, even though he's a 2:20, teen runner for the marathon. And yeah, it's a really great insight to listen to Craig. So if you're a marathon runner and you want to listen to somebody who's experienced in the marathon, who's done quite a few marathons, then I would suggest going back to Craig's and listening over to his. And then you move on to Kenny Wilson as well. He's a 2 hour and 22 minute marathon man, and he done that at Frankfurt on his debut. So, you know, this is quite a quick debut, 2 hours and 22 minutes from Kenny. Again, he talked about trusting his coaches completely and following a plan and not deviating from it, even though there may be other athletes that are maybe doing bigger sessions or faster sessions or whatever it may be. He keeps to his plan that him and his coaches have set and laid out in the marathon build. And that's also a really good sign of security from an athlete as well, from all athletes, from Adam, from Craig, from Kenny, that they're not insecure in their approach to training. They don't deviate from the plan. They completely trust the process and what their coaches say. That shows a lot of security in their mindset. And then also he spoke about doing a VO2 max test and also lactate testing, which is submaximal testing, to allow him to use the training zones for his marathon training. So VO2 max is you go on the treadmill at your basically at 1 mile per hour or 1 kilometre per hour, then your lactate turn point, and you will run at that pace on an incline for 1 minute at each incline of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% until exhaustion. So it's a really hard test, the VO2 max test, but it gives you your VO2 max, and then also beforehand you'll get something called your lactate testing, which is submaximal testing, and that's where the physiologist will prick your finger or they'll prick your earlobe and they'll get your blood lactate from you, and you'll maybe start at anywhere between 6 minute mile pace depending on your ability as an athlete, and you'll move all the way through to around about 4:48 to 4:30 mile pace, so anywhere between 20, 21, 22 kilometres an hour. You'll do these in 3 minute segments, and you'll move up 1 kilometre per hour each time you complete the 3 minute segment, and eventually you'll come to a point where your blood lactate will spike, and that's where, just before that, that's called your lactate turn point, and that's where you do your tempo running and you try and shift that graph to the right so that then you can cope with a faster pace and also accumulating and buffering lactic acid at the exact same time. That's your sort of science sweet spot that a lot of top athletes use to help them get better at long distance events. And then we moved on to Neil Gourley, who's the 1500 metre British indoor and outdoor champion, and he also represented Great Britain in the 1500 metre final in Doha at the World Championships in 2019. And he spoke about trusting his coach from Virginia Tech. So he also spoke about trusting his coach in Scotland, but when he went to Virginia Tech, he also trusted his coach in the process there also. And he trusted him so much that even though he's went to Oregon Track Club, one of the top elite running clubs in the world, where you've got Mark Rowland and all these top gurus in athletics, he's still stuck with his coach at Virginia Tech, who's also came over to Oregon with him. So he's not had to, leave his coach or anything like that. He's stuck with the coach that's got him so much success, and he's trusting the plan and he's trusting the process. And from there, he also spoke about something really cool. If you remember, if you listen to Neil Gourley's podcast, was his approach to his training, his coach's approach to his training. He done a lot of differential reps, and what I mean by that is he would do, say it was an 800 metres, he would do maybe the first 200 at race pace to get out nice and quick, and then maybe do a slow 400 like in a race situation, in a tactical race at a championship, and then he would blast the last 200, and he'd be set different times for each phase in the 800 metres or 1,000 metres or 600 metre rep. It was such a cool and innovative way that his coach trains Neil, and that also shows in his championship performances over the 1500, becoming British champion indoors and outdoors, and also being able to get to the World Championship final as well. It shows that, you know, the change of pace, really simulating race situations at championships, has really led him in good stead. From there we move on to Chris O'Hare, and Chris O'Hare, you know, European silver medalist at the 3K Indoor Championships in Glasgow. I'm guessing that was one of his proudest moments to share with his family and his friends as well. So, you know, speaking about that with Chris was a really good moment. And then, you know, he was talking about trusting his coach and trusting the process as well. But also, one of the big things that I took away from Chris was that he knows his body really, really well. When a lot of athletes want to prioritise altitude training into their training programme, the year that Chris won in 2019 in the winter time into the early 2019, he declined an altitude camp because previously when he went on altitude training, he, you know, the time spent away from his wife and his kids was quite stressful, and mentally it, you know, sort of burnt him out a little bit. But again, athletes, when other athletes are going to altitude, you think that it's the thing to do because everybody's going and everybody's performing well. You're like, right, well, if everybody else is going and then you get great results from it physically, then I'm all in. Whereas that didn't work well for Chris at one point. He then understood his body and knew what works for him and what doesn't work for him, and didn't just go with a trend. He actually decided to stay at home and work super hard while other athletes went to altitude training, so that he could be with his family, be with his wife, be with his kids. Because Chris O'Hare's a little bit different from most athletes that are on the GB squad, where he does have a family, he does have a wife, and he does have 2 kids. So his situation is completely different from a single bachelor, or, you know, male female athlete who's single and doesn't have any sort of ties at home. So I thought that was a really, you know, insightful and noble thing that Chris was speaking about, where he doesn't just follow the trends, he actually listens to his body, understands what works for him and what doesn't work for him. And he actually said no to altitude before the European Championships, and he felt a lot fresher mentally, so he knew that he was going to perform well physically. And sometimes a lot of people can think that, you know, athletics is all just about physical and how fit you are and how strong you are, but at the end of the day, you know, your mindset plays a massive role in getting the best out of your body. And that's where, you know, Chris has found his sweet spot of, you know, when can he go away to camps, when can he not, finding that balance of, you know, being a dad, being a husband more times in a year than going away and maybe causing a bit more stress for himself mentally because he's away from his family, and that's probably a really hard thing to do. And, you know, he was very brave in saying no to the altitude camp. So, you know, if you haven't listened to Chris O'Hare's, I suggest you do as well, because the guy's achieved so much in the sport. It was actually, you know, it was a long podcast to go through all his highlights. So that's, you know, just a massive credit to him and all he's achieved in his athletics career so far. Then we move on to Lynsey Sharp, you know, first female athlete on the podcast, and it was an absolute belter. You know, she's the Scottish 800 metre record holder. She's also won European medals at junior level and senior level. She's European champion over 800 metres, and her story was incredible. You know, she gave us so much insight into, you know, outside and inside athletics in her life, but then also her approach to her training, where she doesn't get overwhelmed by the numbers. And what I mean by that is her mileage. She spoke really openly about her mileage in training, where she has a low mileage program. But a low mileage program means that she does a lot more intensity and higher quality work. And she also spoke about doing shorter reps to make sure she can maintain proper form and cadence as the longer the reps went, she felt that her form was starting to falter, and then that means that she's becoming a lot more inefficient. And when you're running 800, when it's basically now a sprint for 2 minutes or under, sprinters have to maintain form. These ladies, these men who are running the 800 are sprinting for 2 laps of the track. You do need to make sure you're very, very efficient and your form is strong so that you can go up that last 100 metres of the home stretch and pass your competitors. So I really liked how she spoke highly about the training that she's doing. She spoke about dabbling with high mileage, but it just didn't work for her. So, a lot of athletes, like myself, being a marathon runner, we like to be a slave to the mileage. We like to be a slave to the Garmin and the numbers. And sometimes that's good if you're in a long distance event, possibly. But when you're in an 800 metre event like Lynsey is, it doesn't really matter how many miles you're doing a week. It matters getting around those 2 laps as fast as possible. And any excess energy or mileage to waste energy to get into that line faster it's junk mileage. So I fall victim to that. Sometimes when the legs are tired, you still, you've got a double to do at night, and you think that it's brave to go out and do that double, and you think that you're a pussy because if you don't go and do it, then you're not a tough middle distance runner, or a long distance runner. But at the end of the day, it shows real mental fortitude from Lynsey to understand her body and be like, no, I can't do the mileage, I can't do the high mileage, but what I'll do within that mileage is work really hard and get the most out of myself in the meantime. And then she uses cross training as her method to increase her training hours. So she'll go on the bike and she'll do a couple of hours a week on the bike to maintain a high aerobic level of fitness. And from there, we then move on to Butchy. Butchy, I think, was one of our most listened to podcasts. Again, Scottish record holder over the 3K and the 5K, personal best of 13:06. Absolutely incredible. Came back in 2019 to run 13:06 from a big injury in 2018 that set him back. And he had he said he had a disappointing European Championships in Glasgow, but within 6 months, he was back running 13:06, which is unbelievable. And here he speaks about, a little bit like Chris O'Hare, about understanding his body. He understands what works for him and what doesn't. So he made a big decision to move away from his previous coach and to now just coach himself. And then he also has advisors. So this is, some people are very, very scared to coach themselves because they don't fully bet on themselves. They don't fully bet that they can get the most out of their body with their own mind. But Butchy, very confident man. He spoke really well about how he loves competition. He loves high pressure stakes, high pressure situations. But Butchy bets on himself every day of the week. And for him to, move away from his previous coach to now coach himself and have advisors just really shows you how strongly believes in what he knows works for him, what he knows works for his body, and gets him into the shape that he wants to get into to compete at the best he possibly can. So that was a really insightful part from Butchart. I know that he's a happy-go-lucky type of guy, and he loves to joke around and things, but when it comes to him and his performance and how you see him executing the track, there's no joking there. Like, that is just pure clinical and decisive. So, it was again one of the most viewed podcasts that I had, which was amazing. He also spoke about the importance of altitude in his training programme. So a little bit different maybe from Chris, but again, Chris has got kids. Butchy's got little Bowie, the little his little dog, him and Lynsey's dog, but and that's gonna maybe make things a wee bit harder to go altitude training, to make sure that the dog can go on a kennel and all these sort of things, or somebody can look after the dog while they're away, or whatever it may be. But it's really good to hear that he actually values going to altitude, but he also made a really good point about not going to altitude for too long. When he went to altitude for maybe about 7, 8, 9 weeks in Arizona, he came back and he felt quite flat. So now he knows his optimal amount of time to go to altitude to help his body peak at the right time during this training program. So again, if you want any tips on altitude training, I'd definitely check that one out. And then we move on to Johnny Mellor. 2 hours, 10 minutes for the marathon. Wow, Olympic qualifying standard for Tokyo 2020. And we spoke about his frustrations of Tokyo now being moved to 2021. We spoke about, how was a Seville marathon, the build, his training. We spoke about how he also thinks as well there's no such thing as a perfect marathon build. So for marathon guys out there, even the top guys in Britain don't have the perfect marathon build. So if you're going out and you're prepping for your first marathon, or even if it's your 5th marathon or 6th marathon, the marathon is a different beast where the mileage combined with the long training sessions is going to deplete your body. It's going to deplete your glycogen levels. It's going to kill you sometimes mentally. And then just sometimes the impact going through your joints and your muscles and your tendons and your ligaments. Just sometimes your body, we'd all wish we're the Terminator, but sadly we're just human beings at the end of the day. And Johnny speaks really well about, again, not having one amazing session, but having 3-4 solid, good quality months back to back to back, to then look back on and understand that you're in great shape and that you went through some severe fatigue, but you've been able to still get some quality out of your body under high fatigue conditions. So that was really insightful from him. He also spoke about the importance of the program of your training your marathon program having some speed work still. I don't know if anybody's not listened to it. I think you should listen to this bit if you are a marathon runner. He actually spoke about keeping speed work in your training program within the marathon build and also out with the marathon build, because when you're doing a lot of marathon pace work, it is dampening your fast twitch muscle fibres. And what a bit of speed work will do, whether it be 10k work, whether it be a mix of between 5k and 10k work, or some strides, maybe some hill work after tempo running, or some 200 metres or 150 metre strides after a big session, to get those fast twitch muscle fibres back firing. Because when you're doing a lot of, maybe for Johnny's pace, it'll probably be around 5-minute mile pace or quicker in the marathon, but for miles and miles and miles and miles, for myself, it would be around about anywhere between 5:15 and 5:20 mile pace, which is only really 78 to 80 second 400 metre pace, which isn't that fast. So then when you keep doing that time and time again, along with maybe 90 to 110 miles a week, because you're then easy running between those sessions, your fast twitch muscle fibres aren't getting hit as much as what they would be if you're doing 10k and 5k work for a marathon runner. So he spoke about the importance of still doing some fast twitch muscle fibre work in his training programme during the marathon build. Then he also spoke about a really cool tip about the carbon fibre plates, where there is a lot of athletes now training in these carbon fibre plates, not just competing in them, but just also training in them. And he spoke about, these help give you an assistance in your running economy, but that also means that something isn't working in your body because a carbon fibre plate is taking over. So I thought that was really insightful, where he doesn't train in his carbon fibre plated New Balance shoes. He actually just saves them for race day and maybe a session or two before the race. I thought that was really insightful, because I think a lot of people just keep training in them because, they do feel good, they feel amazing on, they give you that extra % boost in your running economy, or even just the foam in the forefoot that allows you to crash the ground and not feel any repercussions in your fat pads. They are such an amazing shoe to wear, whether it be, the New Balance Fuel Cell TC, whether it be now the Saucony Endorphin, the Vaporfly, the Alpha Fly, the Hoka carbon fibre plated shoe as well. Like, all these great shoes are coming out, but these, like Johnny said, we're saying that assist you in performance, and what you want to do is use them only when you need them to assist you, and let your muscles and tendons be the ones that get worked properly during training, so then at the carbon fibre plate actually gives you a boost on race day. So I thought that was a really cool, insightful thing as well, because I've been training a little bit in the vapor, not the Vaporfly, but the next percent below the Vaporfly, and then I'd wear the Vaporfly for the boost. But you know, if I keep training in them, then maybe I'm not allowing certain muscles to activate the way they should be in a non-plated shoe. But again, everybody's got their opinions. Like Johnny said, he was very open to say that that's his opinion and it's not fact. So it's what works for him, and people have got to find what works for them. So people may be going, oh, I wear the Vaporfly or the Alpha Fly or the Next Percent or the Endorphin or the TC at New Balance shoe. Carbon plate, and actually I'm running personal bests in my races as well as training, then that's amazing. Like, that's really, really good for you. But again, it's just opinion, and it's just another way you can train your body to optimize your performance. But yeah, like, I just wanted to basically have a little takeaway from each athlete and summarise what each athlete was talking about in the podcast, because if you have not listened to any of them, I do really suggest you do, because not only did I help myself in terms of when I was speaking to these great athletes who are all faster than me, it helped me take away something as well. It helped me become a better athlete, not just on the track in training, it was also outside of training as well. How do I mentally approach competition? How do I mentally approach training? How do I mentally approach a marathon block and a marathon training build? So, you know, again, we started with Adam, moved to Craig, Kenny, Neil Gourley, Chris O'Hare, Lynsey Sharp, Andrew Butchy, and then Johnny Mellor. So hopefully, if you have listened to them and found them really insightful, please let me know below what one you found most insightful. If you've missed some, I really implore that you do go back and listen to some of these guys and gals talk about their training and talk about what makes them the best athletes in Scotland, the UK, Europe, and the world. But again, this is a shorter podcast, so I don't want to waffle on too much. You know me, I could talk for Scotland if you let me. But yeah, I hope you found all of them insightful. And please, below, let me know what one you did find most insightful. And hopefully next week we have a new athlete to interview. But I'll keep that one a wee hush hush until Sunday. All right, but you guys have a really good rest of your week. We're on Tuesday here, so Track Tuesday. If anybody had a good track session today, awesome. If people had a great weather again, because it's the summertime, amazing. Tops off, as they say. Hashtag taps off in Glasgow or wherever you are. But again, thank you very much for listening. Again, thank you very much to every single athlete that dedicated their time and their knowledge and experience to share with the listeners. And I can't wait for the next people to come on. But have a good one, and I'll see you soon. See ya!